Got it.
You got it?
Yep.
Yay,
Oh,
good
we're
job.
recording.
team.
Yay, good job, everyone.
I signed in as you, Michelle, but so it looks like it's working though.
Okay.
That's okay. All right, so we might as well go ahead and start. Again, sorry for the technical difficulties, but you know, what would PSCP be without it? All right.
What would this week be without technical difficulties? I think we've had technical difficulties all week.
Honestly, this
yeah.
whole quarantine has been just one big technical difficulty. So welcome to the Public Sector Change Management Group's webinar this month. I will be your producer. My name is Ginger Kloska. I am an intern at the Office of Process Improvement at CDOT, and I will be kind of presenting and going through this with you. For the production team, again, we have me, the host and producer. Kiki Kasi will be the co-producer for today, and then Kaylin Haskovic is going to be the tech support and chat monitor.
And
So
Ginger, it looks like we're not on that slide. We can still see the pre-webinar joke slide.
Let's try that again. Okay.
It's actually in the edit mode is what we're seeing. We're not seeing the presentation mode. So sometimes you have
There
to.
Yay.
All right. See, we got to get these technical difficulties out before any presenters. We got this. All right. So again, where I left off, we've got Kaylin Haskovic, who is doing our tech support and chat monitoring. If you have any questions, comments, or anything to put in the chat, feel free to. We have Kaylin on it. And remember to unmute your phone or microphone when you have when you ask or answer any questions, but also to have your microphone on mute when you're not, just so we make sure that we can hear the right people and not have any clutter in the background. And for those who don't know where that is, it's the little button on the left-hand side of your corner. It'll be the little microphone button. And of course, the PSCP purpose and direction, we have an agnostic group of change management professionals who learn from each other and build knowledge and inspire and lead change throughout the world, ensuring that those impacted by change, sorry, I got a screen in the way here, are successful with that change. Of course, thank you for contributing to our PSCP community and making it the best that it can be. So to start off, of course, we've been hearing the new normal as a phrase lately. I recently saw in a Forbes article where they mentioned that change is the new normal. So change management is ever important and increasingly become part of our daily lives. And of course, your voice is very important to our success and value of our community in ways that you can contribute as presenting, sharing your successes with us, and all of your information, and then completing our surveys that we send out. Those include feedback surveys and then also surveys for improving PSCP as a whole. And then, of course, asking questions. And again, you can do that through the chat or in meeting yourself. All right. And our agenda for today, we have me with a warm welcome, of course. And then we have our other PSCP board, with Michelle, Megan, and is Claire on yet? I'm not sure.
Claire's on, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Michelle, Megan, and Claire. And Gintare will be talking to us about change management in the UK Ministry of Defense. She's a senior change manager there, and it's going to be a great presentation to show you all. And then, of course, we have our open forum and then a discussion with our board. Again, we have Gintare there, and then our board members, and then we have our closing.
Can I just jump in here because I think I dropped the ball on this. It was an action item for me to get some really important community members on to this agenda, and I know we will have some time to chat with them, but Carl Greer and Nichelle Rogers are with us, and they have been part of our community since the beginning. They've been with us for a long time. They've done some great presentations. They've been on panels with us, and we just felt like they were really great perspectives to bring in right now in the current moments of change and trying to move towards more racial justice and non-discrimination. And we wanted to hear their thoughts as change practitioners about how we can use our change skills to kind of navigate this moment and what that might look like from some different perspectives. And so grateful for them to be on there. And I'm just want to make a huge apology for not getting that out into the information for our entire community, because I think it's going to be a really good conversation. So thank you so much for being here. And thanks for letting me jump in, Ginger.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you all for joining us today. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hand over the screen to Gintare, and you can go ahead and present.
Sure. Thank you very much, Ginger. Thanks for handing over and for your lovely introduction. Let me just quickly share my screen with you guys. Maybe 2 seconds. Great. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep. Yes.
Fantastic. Awesome.
Yes.
So thank you so much for having me speak today. I'm really excited to be speaking with you and sharing my insights and knowledge from managing change in the UK's public sector. We've got a few things to get through in today's presentation. So I'm going to talk to you about my current role at the Ministry of Defence, where my team and I are working to build change management capability in our VAS department. I'm also going to talk about what, in my opinion, are the top contributors for successful change management in the public sector and how to get those right. And of course, along the way, I'll share a number of examples, insights, and lessons learned to hopefully keep you guys engaged throughout. And there will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end. But if you do have a burning question, please can you just pop it into the chat, and I'm sure that Ginger will try and keep up, or sorry, one of the ladies looking after the chat will try and keep up with that. Right, so very quickly about me. So I am APMGM ProSci accredited change practitioner. And as I mentioned, I work for the Ministry of Defense, and my team and I are essentially are tasked with providing strategic direction as well as tools to the number of change practitioners that operate across our vast organizations. We're 250,000 people strong, quite big. Prior to joining Ministry of Defense, I worked across a number of other public sector organizations over the past 5 years, where I delivered various change initiatives ranging from sustainability to delivering modern workplace strategy, etc. And in my spare time, I also lead the Change Management Institute's London chapter. So I think all in all, it's fair to say that I'm a big fan of change management and a true believer in its value. That's enough about me. So I thought I'll start with telling you a bit about Ministry of Defense before I launch into how we build change management capability in our department. So as I mentioned, we are quite large. We're 250,000 people strong, made up from both civilian but also armed forces personnel. We operate across 4,000 sites worldwide. And to make it more complicated, we have a decentralized governance model. And by that, I mean that we are made up of a number of smaller defense organizations that are quite autonomous. We have a huge transformation underway. In fact, it's so large that it makes up 1/3 of all of Her Majesty's government's major programs portfolio, and it's worth £140 billion over its life cycle. And how our employees feel about change? Well, let's just say there is room for improvement. Only 23% of our staff, according to last year's satisfaction survey, thought that we manage change well in our organization. And of course, we all know that up to 80% of all the project benefits are dependent on people change. So with that in mind, there is a widespread recognition in our organization that in order to drive our transformation and achieve our transformation objectives, we need to change how we do change. We need to improve our change management capability. And there's also wider recognition that we need to have a bit of a change in terms of our culture towards being more change keen and change receptive. So all of that recognition gave a rationale for establishing a central change team, which I'm part of. And we've started our journey in sort of mid-2019, so 1 year on now. By no means are we finished, but we have achieved some great progress. And I really do apologize about this busy slide. I promise not every slide is like that, but it has been a very busy year. So after spending first 6 months planning, we launched into delivery in early 2020. And so we released our change management methodology and toolkit, which we have worked to produce with our consultants, but also we involve the prominent change practitioners from across the organization to ensure that we capture that localized knowledge. And then we, alongside rolling out the toolkit, we rolled out the change management practitioner training. And all the people who've gone through the practitioner training also received the materials that they require in order to be able to train their colleagues. So by doing that, we significantly increased the pool of trainers in our organization. We worked to come up with and kick off a senior leadership engagement campaign to ensure that we had a buy-in into the reasons for change in defense at the top level. And we worked with our scrutiny colleagues to ensure that we include the change readiness assessment in their project scrutiny checklist, so to ensure that we are thinking about change really early on in the project cycle. And we have also standardized the career pathway. So we standardized JDs for change professionals, and we also continue to offer hiring support to the managers to ensure that we are able to attain the right talent into our organization. Alongside that, we've been working to build our change management community of practice, and we are extremely proud of that particular bit. I'll explain why in a few slides' time, and why it has been such an important undertaking for us. We also encourage the local change communities to ensure that we're able to have that sort of localized collaboration and knowledge sharing. And inspired by the success of our defense community, I have also found that the cross-government change management working group that now has 11 departments represented, so departments such as transport, culture, home office, cabinet office, and it's also a fantastic opportunity for all of us to collaborate across Her Majesty's government. Our current initiative that we're looking at is developing people leaders change management awareness training to ensure that we equip our people managers with the right skills to lead their workforce for the change. We're also supporting a major culture transformation initiative in our organization, which is our empowerment program. So this program essentially focuses on providing our frontline staff with the trust, authority, and resources that they need in order to drive change in the way that they work themselves. And in doing so, create an organization that is innovation prone, that encourages experimentation, is more change ready. So that's what we have been up to. Now, how we've done it, we treated this initiative as very much a change project in itself. So we've created a burning platform, had a really compelling case for change, and clearly set out tangible benefits of the program, secured strong, visible senior leadership early on in the initiative, identified the impacted groups early, and ensured that all of the interventions are tailored, consistently monitored readiness, and only pushed out outputs when the groups were ready to receive them, and offered and continued to offer actually extensive post-delivery support in order for the changes to embed. And finally, we had a really fantastic communications and engagement strategy, and I'll tell you more about it again in a few minutes' time. So what have we learned? A lot. I think, as you do when you are working on something that hasn't really been done before. But I think for me, this was very much an opportunity to validate my thinking around certain elements of change management being more impactful than others. And that is exactly the insight that I am looking to share with you today. What are those top contributors to successful change management in the public sector, and how to get those right? But of course, in preparation for today's presentation, I just wanted to validate my thinking. So I've asked my colleagues from the cross-government change management community to tell me what they thought were the top 3 contributors to successful change management in the public sector. And here's what they told me: active sponsorship, really closely followed by communications and engagement. Luckily, that's exactly what I think. So starting with sponsorship first, I thought I'd include this slide from process research because essentially this goes to show that active and visible sponsorship isn't just crucial for projects that happen in the public sector. Across the board, actually since 1998, we've known that active and visible sponsorship is that crucial element that makes our change initiatives a success. But of course, as change practitioners, we know that active and visible sponsorship doesn't just happen. We often have a leader who's been asked to lead change initiative, and then it's down to us to support them so that they can do their work effectively. Now, how can we support our sponsors? Well, first of all, it's important to remember that your sponsor is, first of all, a person. So you need to ensure that they have gone through their own personal change curve, and that they have the personal desire to change before you can expect them to take on their sponsors' responsibilities. So a few years ago, I was working on this modern workplace program, and I had a fantastic sponsor. He was really bought into the rationale for the changes. And one of the key changes was that we were taking away personalized desks and replacing those desks with more of a hot desking arrangement. So totally understood the business reasons, but he would refuse to give up his desk. Do you want to know why? Because he used to cycle to work and wear his trainers to do that, and then get into the office, get to his desk, change into his work shoes, and then if he didn't have the desk, where could he possibly store his trainers throughout the day? I know, it's funny, right? We've all been there, I'm sure. So it took a number of conversations to help him see the value of him adopting this change personally, how, you know, he was such an important role model for his team, and so it is important that he is on board and leading this change to prevent resistance elsewhere. Conversations around how him adopting this change will really reinforce our equality values in the organization. And then finally, I had to check in a little carrot and let him have the absolute first dips at the new lockers that we were building on the ground floor for everyone else who is also cycling to work. It's London after all. And so and so that was enough to bring him on board and generate that personal desire to change. So once you've done that, you also may need to remind your sponsors why change management is so important and why they should care. So what are the benefits? Which, of course, as change practitioners, we know they are numerous. So change management helps us mitigate the risks, helps us achieve our objectives, save costs, avoid costs, etc. But then I think when you speak to your sponsor and you say something like this will help you make a saving, they are thinking, great, how much? And I think sometimes it can be difficult to answer that question and make and express the benefits of change management in a tangible way. So for that, I often use the ProScience concept of the people return on investment factors. So the three factors are ultimate utilization, proficiency, and speed of adoption. And if we take ultimate utilization as an example, suppose we're working on a rollout of a new operating system, and it is down to change management to bring everyone on board the change. And suppose we fail to manage change and 50% of our workforce are not ready, willing, or able to use the new operating system. And so we end up having to run the old and the new in parallel. How much does that cost us in terms of maintenance cost, operational cost, etc.? And just like that, you were able to really quantify the monetary value of your change management activity. So I think that's quite powerful. Another one that I use quite often is this have versus use concept, and I often pair it with a laptop, because I think we've all been through the laptop change in our lives. So, you know, getting your sponsor to understand the difference between having a laptop and using your laptop efficiently, and knowing that the value actually comes from using the laptop efficiently. And project will deliver your laptop, but change management will ensure that it is being delivered efficiently. And you would not believe how popular this definition is in our organization. I've heard it reused over and over at sort of C-suite level. So I'm sharing with you in case you might also find it useful. And I think another important thing is to help your sponsor understand what their role is exactly, because I think we often assume that, oh, they should know what a good change leader should do. But actually, in many instances, your sponsor has been for bad change, just like many of us. So they simply don't know what is expected of them. And what does not help is that they know what project manager is expecting, which is, you know, the sponsor turning up to the board, signing on the dotted line and making the decisions. As change managers, our expectation is completely different. We need them to be visible. We need them to be the living example of the change. We need them to be interacting with the frontline, etc. So the expectation is completely different, and we need to ensure really early on that they understand what their expectation is, and what our expectation as change managers is. And so I think we should think of ourselves as our sponsors' coaches, and it's down to us to support their activities, and it's down to us to make it as easy as possible for them to assume that visible and active sponsors role that is so crucial for a success of a change initiative. Now, the next big contributor to successful change is that I wanted to cover is communications and engagement. As you remember, in that word cloud, that was the other big one. I'm sure that you'll all agree that having a great communications on your project is crucial for any project, let alone change project. But I think we often get comms wrong because we know that communicating effectively and efficiently is really time consuming and resource heavy process. And if you're anything like me, then you often work on projects where you don't have a dedicated comms resource. And so the duty to communicate falls on your already busy shoulders. But I just wanted to include this slide from Process Research, again, basically summarizes what change managers said they do differently on their next initiative, which is they basically said that communicate more, have better comm strategy, communicate earlier, and have more people working on comms. So I think that reinforces that the importance of comms, and also the importance of not treating comms as a bit of an afterthought. So I have got a question for you guys, and I want you to write your answers in the chat if that's okay.
Actually, Gintare, I do have access to the poll, so I can go ahead and launch that poll now.
Fantastic, that sounds great. Thanks, Kaylin. Yes, if you could launch the poll, it'd be fantastic. And the question for you is this: how many times do you think someone needs to hear a message in order to fully understand it or to internalize it? Just give you a minute or two to submit your votes. So how many times does someone need to hear a message in order to really internalize it?
Okay, I'm gonna give it just one more second and then I'll go ahead.
Awesome.
Looks like
thanks.
it's stabilizing, so I'll go ahead and end the poll.
Great.
And share the results.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. Great. You know your research, guys. Fantastic. Yes, it's actually 5 to 7 times. So a lot of times, isn't it? So with that in mind, I dare state that it is actually not possible to over communicate. But of course, you stand a much better chance of achieving your communication goals if you're being strategic about how you communicate, with who you communicate, and when you communicate. And here I just wanted to share a story with you of our engagement and comm strategy that we used for the change management capability building exercise at the Ministry of Defense. So after we've done our stakeholder analysis, it became apparent really quickly that our audience is huge. They're not in the same country. They are not in the same industry. They are not in of the same seniority level. And then we had 4 people in our team, no dedicated comms resource. So it became very apparent that we had really limited options of delivering face-to-face communications and any other kind of meaningful communication. So we decided to approach it differently and be smart about our resources. And so our strategy was this: we were first going to focus on building our change community of practice, and not just building it, but having really engaging people. So we end up with having a number of change agents, and we did that through employing sort of good standards of communications or principles of good communication. So we ensured that we communicated regularly to keep the momentum. We ensured that communication was face-to-face where possible, where not possible, two-way, so lots of opportunities to feedback, get involved, etc. Tailored all the content, and also provided a lot of variation in terms of both content but also delivery methods. So we created and really utilized our Teams channel where we'd constantly put out information, articles, tools, invitations to collaborate, invitations to give opinion, competitions, etc. But also at the same time, we were hosting and continue to host bi-weekly calls, face-to-face events, speaker events, posting recorded content, etc., just to keep it interesting and exciting. And actually, although it was really resource intensive, it was a fantastic initiative because we managed to grow our community by 700% in the matter of 4 months. So we went from having 30 change agents to having 200 change agents. And that has moved us from having 4 voices in our organization to having 204 voices in our organization. Then at the same time, we felt like we were really ready to launch into the phase 2, which was giving these engaged change agents sales tools. And by that, I mean the kind of tools we'd use ourselves to go and speak to the SROs and project managers and senior leaders about why it is important to manage change in defense. So as I said, that has really, really worked for us. And we ended up with having so many voices in the organization that we're able to deliver face-to-face communications on our behalf. I suppose what I'm saying is strategize about how you communicate and don't treat comms as a bit of an afterthought, because it can really be dangerous to your initiatives, as we saw from the previous ProSci slide. And I think whenever we are communicating, we need to do it in a most meaningful way possible, because I know that the temptation is real sometimes to just write a blanket email and hit send and hope that it will deliver your engagement goals. Sadly, it doesn't work. I tried, it does not work. And so I am personally a big fan of group interventions, because I think it provides us with a fantastic chance to win over and bring on board change initiative, not one, but a group of people in a relatively short period of time. And I'm sure that some of you are thinking that, oh, I remember that one time I was hosting a group intervention, and there was just one person standing up and asking all of the uncomfortable questions, and it was not a good experience. Again, I've been there as well. So I think the caveat is be prepared. Only do it if you know your change and your group inside out. But then if you are prepared, then again, it's a fantastic opportunity to, get people to ask questions, answer those questions that are important to them, and reduce their resistance to change, and bring them on board change. Remember that one person that is challenging you? They are doing you a favor, because they are asking questions everyone else is thinking. So you have this unique opportunity to answer those questions, give people clarity, and really bring them on board the change initiative. So welcome that challenge from people. I don't know how I'm doing for time, but I will just, I've got 5 more minutes of content, so I will crack on. Please drop me a quick note if you want me to speed up, Ginger.
No, you're doing great.
Awesome, fantastic. Right, so next one, workarounds and why they are so dangerous for our change initiatives. Well, as you know, majority of change initiatives actually fail post go live because the changes fail to embed, and they fail to embed because workarounds emerge. Workaround is an opportunity to do things the way that we're used to doing things. So it is an opportunity to not change. That's why it is so dangerous to our change initiatives. And as change managers, it is our responsibility to stick around long enough after a project has finished to be able to identify and remove those workarounds. And I want to do a quick activity with you guys, and you will need a pencil and a piece of paper for this one. So I'll just give you, I'll let it go silent and give you a moment to go and grab a piece of paper and a pen if you don't have it on your desk. Awesome. Give me a nod if we are ready. Awesome. Right. Can I ask you to write down your name, just your first name, or your signature? Oh, loving the cat, Beth. 3 times. Just your name and your signature on a piece of paper. If you can write down 3 times. Awesome. What I want you to do next is I want you to close your eyes and write your name or your signature 3 more times. Harder, right? Now what I want you to do is I want you to take your pen into your non-dominant hand and write your name 3 more times, please. Change is hard, isn't it? Who knew? Right, so I've been watching you and I saw a number of you open your eyes. So those of you that did I ask you to open your eyes? No, I didn't. So congratulations, you have invented a workaround. It was easy, wasn't it? Just to show you how easy it is to come up with a workaround, and there are few certainties in life, but I think you can be almost certain that the workarounds will emerge. And since we touched on that sort of, and humans are programmed to revert to the most familiar way of doing things, so don't worry about it too much. And since we touched on that sort of human behavior point of view, I just wanted to quickly tell you about the use of behavioral insights in the UK's public sector. So In 2013, a small nudge unit was founded as part of in the cabinet office, and they were tasked with running behavioral trials and generating insights. They had a number of successes, but one of their best ones was including this one line into the tax return letter. And you can see the line on the bottom right corner of the slide. So basically they said 9 out of 10 people paid their tax in time, with nudged significantly more people in the previous year to pay their tax in time, saving millions of pounds to the HMRC. So I'm personally extremely fascinated by behavioral insights, and luckily for us, we've got a small unit at the Ministry of Defense that is sort of working to help facilitate our cultural change in the organization. And finally, I just want to quickly talk about the value of authenticity and resilience. I think as change managers, you'll agree that we often operate in this gray zone where neither them nor us. So in order to navigate those various groups of stakeholders and people, and in order to navigate hierarchical organizations, and in order to gain people's trust, I think we need to be, and we stand a better chance if we're being authentic and true. And of course, the value of authenticity has been confirmed by a number of studies, including the latest research by Google that found that the teams that are able to build the security which allows people to be authentic at work outperform the teams that don't. But of course, it can be difficult to be authentic because sometimes our organizational culture is a certain way, or our colleagues carry themselves a certain way, so we just want to fit in because that's the easiest option. But if we all fit in, we lose our cognitive diversity that is so valuable to our organizations. And then if we're fitting in, we're not helping anyone. Not ourselves, because we can't meet our full potential, and not our organizations. And I think in our society, we can already see the shift towards appreciating authenticity more. And as change managers, I think we must be at the forefront of that movement. And finally, change can change change. Yes, I just wanted to see how many times I can say word change in one sentence. Turns out 3. No, I'm just kidding. But essentially, I just want to say that things change, and people look to us to help them through the changes. But in order to do that, I think we have got to be ready to deal with change ourselves. So it is really worth investing time and effort in building our own personal resilience. So that's all that I wanted to share with you today. Thank you very much for listening. And just in summary, the top 2 contributors to successful change management in the public sector appear to be suitable sponsorship and active communication. And if you're really busy and you only have time to get 2 things right on your change program, focus on those 2, because that will place you at quite a good place for success. And also remember to be your amazing, authentic selves, and remember to reinforce change, because that's when it's most at risk. Thank you once again, and I want to hand it over to you now. So what Ginger will do in a moment, she'll pull up a whiteboard for us. So what I want you to do is I want you to share your insights for successful change management in the public sector. And then what I will do, I'll take this whiteboard back to both my community of practice at the Ministry of Defense, but also my cross-government change management community, so we can enable this transatlantic knowledge and experience sharing. So we'll keep this whiteboard up for the duration of the Q&A session. And if you have any questions for me, then I'll be more than happy to take them.
Great. All right, so go ahead and stop sharing your screen, Gintare, and then I can pull up the whiteboard.
Just give me one moment. Ooh. There we go.
Perfect.
Is that okay? Awesome.
And I'll go ahead and share the whiteboard. So with this whiteboard function, you'll notice that you can either select text on your screen and then type some things in. Or, I mean, if you're really feeling artsy, you can draw what you want to say. But for those who aren't very familiar with this option, just go to the top part of your screen where it has the says Ginger is sharing the screen, and then go to, I believe it's either more, and then you just go to annotate.
Yeah, it's annotate.
Perfect. So go ahead and put what are your insights for change management, and what Gintare talked about. Listening, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think we can, give people a minute to think and just kind of let's just leave the whiteboard up so people can have a little think and then add their comments.
Perfect. All right, so we'll give this a few more minutes and then kind of talk about, see if I can, and then we'll kind of start with the discussion. Awesome. Looks like a lot of these are having to deal with communication, listening, sponsorship, collaboration, frequent check-ins, alignment,
Oh wow,
being at the beginning.
Yeah, some really good ideas. So I'm really excited to be able to take that back to my community as well. It'll be fantastic. So really appreciate your input, guys. It's great.
If you're having trouble at all with the whiteboard, feel free to put answers in the chat as well.
Yeah, just starting to do things, sometimes seeking permission in advance will stall things. That's what Darcy mentioned. This is great.
Fantastic.
All right, well, we're gonna, oh, go ahead.
No, go on, go. I was just gonna say no such thing as too much communication. Totally agree.
Very true, very true. Well, we're gonna go ahead and move forward from this. I'd love to continue seeing all of your insight. Go ahead and post that in the chat. I'm actually going to stop the whiteboard sharing and we'll just kind of continue seeing these messages in the chat. And we'll go ahead and start the discussion here. Let me go ahead and get the correct screen. I'm just gonna have to scroll through these real quick. All right, so now we're gonna have our discussion. Before our open forum begins, we have our PSCP board members along with a few other contributors, and we're just gonna discuss some popular change management trends during this time.
Ginger, I can't hear you.
Looks like she froze. I could hear her, but now you look frozen.
Yeah, I can hear you, Ginger.
Okay, am I still frozen?
No sound. That's okay, Ginger. We can move on. I think you transitioned us well into this next step. And again, I just want to invite Carl and Nichelle to join us. I think as change practitioners, we're all just saying, what can we do right now? We know that it's time for change in this world. We see the injustices in the world, and we as an organization want to be part of the solution. And so we want this to be kind of casual. And if you have any questions, but just kind of starting the question with, what can we do as change practitioners to be more effective at diversity, equity, and inclusion, whether it's in our own organizations or really at this cultural change that we're seeing. So I'm going to hand it over to Carl, Nichelle. Feel free to chime in on this.
Go ahead, Carl. Thank you. Okay, so one thing I was actually thinking about the other day, because I was on a...
I'm not hearing them.
Can you hear me? Okay. Because one of the things I was thinking about the other day, because I was on a video chat with some other change professionals, and when I was just looking at everybody's screen, I noticed there wasn't a lot of people.
Could you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear Carl.
What if I go on mute?
You're fine.
But what I noticed, there wasn't a lot of people of color on the call. Of course, there were some people that just had their screen, it wasn't showing their screens, etc.
Sometimes it's the you have to go into the audio settings and change your microphone. And so the way you would do that is you go by that mute button, and there's a little carrot looking thing that you can go in, and you can sometimes change your microphone. Because Carl, I can hear you speaking, but I can't hear you. And I see you have a headphone, so that could help us solve this. What about Nichelle?
I can hear Carl pretty clearly.
I can
Yeah,
hear you.
we can hear
everything
Carl.
else, Carl.
We can all hear Carl. I think it might be on your end, Megan.
Oh, some of you can hear everyone. Great.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody
Then
can hear y'all.
maybe it's on our side.
That's all right. Sorry about that, Carl.
Oh, not a problem.
All of a
Gotta have
sudden,
technical.
when you shut the whiteboard, I couldn't hear anymore. So when I went out and came back in, I can hear now. So I don't know what that was.
Interesting. Well, Carl, sorry to interrupt you. You're free to keep on going. You said you were noticing that some of the people had their or their videos still open, where others didn't.
Yeah, and I just noticed there wasn't a lot of people of color, and just in my other, presentations I've done or conversations I've had, there isn't a lot of people of color. And I was talking to a friend last night, and it was like, well, how do we bring more people of color into different fields? So when you're looking at the change management field, how do we engage people of color to actually bring them in to be change managers, going out to colleges, going out to high schools, et cetera, just engaging more in that area. Not that it hasn't been done. It was just, it was in the times we are now, it was really noticeable. And I said, okay, what can I do on my end? I do speak in venues like this and other places. So with schools being shut down right now, I don't have the opportunity to actually do that, but actually reaching out and engaging, saying, hey, here's a profession I'm in. It's about helping people. It's, you learn these facilitation skills, you learn different things. Why don't you try, come sit in on a meeting. Let me talk to you more about it. So that's one way I was thinking about how do we get more people of color, more diversity into the change management profession, because I personally just lucked into it years ago and decided I wanted to make a change. But the other part is getting that. We always talk about, when we communicate that we're all speaking the same language in our projects, that the message we're sharing from the sponsor level all the way through is the same. So with things that are going on, whether it's the virus, the cultural disparity that's going on, understanding what the message is that's trying to be shared, because there are so many different versions of Black Lives Matters, defund the police, etc., that it gets lost and people hear their different things. So, talking to my daughter, 23-year-old, saying, we need to defund the police. And I said, well, what does that mean to you? And she says, we need to get rid of police altogether. And I'm like, well, that's probably not possible. I think you should do some research and find out what the message they're actually trying to share by that. Because just getting that general message of defund the police, it goes a lot deeper than that. So getting that understanding and being able to share the message, so we're all, or a majority of us, are speaking the same language. And I mean, that's a skill that we learn being change professionals. Nichelle, you have.
Yeah, I think I appreciate what you've said, and just thinking, I think my thoughts are just more in terms of what we've been doing within our organization. I work for a federal agency, and there's a fine line of how to communicate things such as this, because you can start veering into the political world, which you're not supposed to as a federal agency or government agency. And so one of the things that I think about in any change or communication that I do, there's a quote by Maya Angelou that says, and I'm paraphrasing, but she says, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And so in terms of activities or engagement or what you say and how you say it, at this point, and people are looking at how they're being made to feel at this point. And that's driving a lot of emotional reaction and all of that type of stuff. So one of the things that I think is most important is falling back on what you already have a strong foundation in. So for my organization, we've been doing dignity and respect, the 30 tips of dignity and respect for probably 10 years has been part of our culture. We look at our values for the organization: diversity, inclusion, communicate for shared understanding, building trust through excellence, just falling back on what we already have established and kind of doubling down there and not trying to start anything new per se, because at this time it could feel insincere, right? So going with what you know, going with the culture that you've seen, and as change practitioners, you know, you might have done surveys on something completely separate from this. It might be an IT project, but you can gather from those survey responses how people are feeling in the organization, whether they're really upset just in general because all their answers are negative and they're complaining and they're mad, or whether they're in a good place, right? And so just knowing your culture, knowing what you have in place, and doubling down on how you engage with your people, to me has been what seems to work. And kind of along the lines of the Maya Angelou quote, my leadership actually came and I'm sorry if I say your name wrong, Gintare? Sorry, okay. I hate to mispronounce people's names. What you said earlier about leadership engagement rang so true, because a lot of people wanted to hear from our leadership. They want to know and see that they were engaged in this and not just covering it over, sugarcoating it, or making it seem like it's something happening to everybody else. Our leaders actually showed that it was happening to them too, you know, and everybody is experiencing, may not be experiencing the same thing. And I love the idea of writing your name down, and, you know, like mine came out horrible by the time I got to the third thing, but even in my own steps, I was experiencing something. I got a little anxious, like, oh my gosh, you want me to write with my left hand now? But everybody's experiencing this in their own way right now, right? And as a change practitioner, the first thing I actually should have started with is, how are you doing as change practitioners? Because you can't lead through this if, you know, you can't lead other people through it when you're still trying to process it yourself. So making sure you're staying in touch with who you are and how you feel and being honest about it. I will tell you, I've not been okay, you know, over the last couple of weeks. I have not been okay. And it's okay to say that. And when people see that side and see that, you know, the change practitioners were usually the bubbly people in the room, like go, excited, happy, all that kind of stuff. When you're having that frank and honest conversation with people and showing where you are, and the leaders are willing to show that kind of vulnerable place too, I think it really sets a foundation. And I think, Beth, you had asked a question in the chat about building that safe space, right? Well, if the leaders don't create it, you will never have it, right? And so, I think, in general, I don't want to take up a lot of time. I think just falling back on, you know, what you already have a strong foundation in, doubling down on that, and building out your capacity and your engagement with employees in that space. And if you have customer base, we're mostly internal, but using what you already have to engage is probably the best way to move forward in that instance. That's just initial thoughts.
I think I also saw that question around, you know, how do you build that safe space? And I think absolutely leadership play a crucial role. So we actually doing quite interesting stuff as part of our empowerment program at Ministry of Defense. So we have this challenge panel. So anyone in the organization could bring up their issues to that panel, and they are quite senior civil servants across our department, and they will listen to you. You can do it anonymously if you like. That's a really good opportunity to say, look, this is what is limiting us. Can you help us resolve this, because it is really impacting on us? And we also have this great initiative called the reverse mentoring. So every senior leader must have someone quite junior reverse mentoring them and feeding them you know, how it feels to be on the ground and how they can really make a change and difference in their team. But I think in terms of like building that more inclusive and more safe space, it is changes down to every single one of us. So maybe asking the quiet person in the room to contribute their views, or if you're seeing that someone's being overwhelming in the meeting, saying, well, others haven't contributed yet, so perhaps it's good to let others speak as well, so we can get their perspective as well. So I think it all starts, every big change starts with a small change. It's a chain of small changes down to us to stand up and say, well, this is not right, and I'm going to make that personal change, and in doing so encourage someone maybe to stand up next time, or kind of be different next time around.
I like what you said there, though. Owning our own actions. A lot of times we're trying to point the fingers at other people. You need to fix this. You need to change this about yourself, instead of first looking at how I've had to check myself several times to say, am I taking that wrong? You know, or is that person really doing it? Or am I doing something on that side too? I just shared the link to the 30 Tips of Dignity and Respect site. And what I love about this that fits that response is that these are the most simplest things we can do as a human being towards others. Smile at somebody, say hello, say thank you, you know, join a team, build cultural awareness, and it's stuff that we own as an individual. There's no politics assigned to it. There's no race, gender, anything. It's just human to human. And I absolutely love it. So definitely use those, share those. Our leadership actually uses those, in all of our meetings. We'll start with a tip and ask people, you know, what they did that week that might represent that tip or whatever. But yeah, I love that. Owning your own stuff.
Yeah, I love that too, Nichelle, because one of the things I've had discussions with coworkers, and I have kids that are 23 and 21, and you know, they're asking questions. They even ask me, "Hey, Dad, how come you're not out here marching?" And I said, "Well, you know, I'm doing things in my way, things that I'm comfortable with doing. I'm not trying to go and do something that's not comfortable for me. So, you know, I speak out, I lend my voice, I teach, well, those kind of things. So people finding their safe place, their safe space to be able to do what's comfortable for them. Because when they try, in my opinion, when they try to do something that's not comfortable for them, it gets a little bit awkward, and then, you know, it could go sideways. People take it differently. So that's why it's important. Kind of like Nichelle and others have said, you know, find your safe space and your ability to do what you find important in your way. And plus, you know, I told my kids I'm too old to be out there marching right now anyway.
One thing that Megan and I and Michelle had talked about last week, we talked about something else that we as change practitioners can do within our organizations, and that's to look at your actual policies and procedures that are in place. That's one of the first places you can start as a change practitioner, encouraging people to look at those, and almost like having the challenge panel, having a panel of folks to review those policies that is a diverse panel, calling on your diversity network. You know, they don't have to be change practitioners, but just calling on people who have the diverse perspectives, because, you know, a lot of times there are things in place that we might not think about from another, you know, ethnicities or genders viewpoint, that there may be biases that are inherent to those rules. So that's a great place to start. And you don't have to announce it to the world. You can just do it. I think somebody in the chat said, just go do it. ask for permission later.
Definitely. And I want to thank you, Carl and Nichelle, for contributing today. It was very, very insightful and very helpful. And same with you, Gintare, as well, for contributing today. We are getting a little bit short on time, so I just wanted to go ahead and close us out. But I do encourage you all to continue the discussion we have a LinkedIn group where you can share your opinions and the community there. And we'll have more information as well on our website. So I'm going to go ahead and get this real quick. All right. So We have our announcements for this month. We have, of course, we want you to share your voice and engage in the community, as I mentioned. So please fill out our after webinar survey that I'll be sending out pretty soon after we end this webinar. Join us on LinkedIn again, continue that conversation, and then help us to present. So present and share your thoughts. We have our August webinar coming up, and we still need presenters on that. So please contact us. And another way you can contribute is through our PSCP newsletter. We have surveys going out, or you can contact us via email. Our email is info@pscpractitioners.org. And let me just make sure I'm not missing anyone. All right.
Okay, is that it? Are we at the end?
I think so. Perfect. Well, thank you all for joining us today. And again, great conversation started, and hopefully we can continue those conversations throughout our workspaces and change management. And Nichelle, do you have any closing thoughts?
I do. I was just going to say, I want to keep this conversation going, so expect more on this the next webinar in the newsletters. I think that we all need to, it's not just something we talk about once. I think this is something that has to happen forever. And I want to keep it moving forward. I really believe in what we're doing right now. I'm so passionate right now. I want everybody to feel that passion too. So expect more about this in the future. And thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Carl and Nichelle. We really appreciate your input and your insights. And happy hump day, and you guys have a great rest of your week.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.